Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Oh, we missed our roll call.
Oh,
Russ Camp,
Here.
Dan Ruck,
Here.
Jeremy Hall,
no,
Jay Luke,
yes.
and Keith Karpinski.
Present.
We have 4 out of 5 today.
Was he excused or absent?
I suppose that would be up to the chair.
Jeremy Hall was here yesterday and said that he was unable to make it because he's fighting fires today.
All right, we'll call him excused then. All right. Now we're ready, Jay, for you.
I'll second.
Does your motion still stand for the agenda?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, are there any discussion on the agenda? Not all those in favor?
Aye.
Carries. How about our minutes from our November 7th meeting?
Just read them. I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? Not all those in favor?
Aye.
Carries. Are there any public comments? Any public comments we're aware of? Are there any supervisors not seated as committee members that have information for this committee?
Brad Olson, thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. Just here to speak on your next item of business, the expansion of Resolution 3523, the municipal housing program to allow towns and municipalities to borrow money from that to use for broadband. So several of our rural towns are looking to put broadband in to finish their towns off. I think it's just a good way for us to, there again, use that money that hasn't been used a lot of, but to make it available to towns to finish broadband for housing down the road, infrastructure. And I think it's important that towns also have the ability to use this money to move forward and help rural residents of the county. Thank you.
Great. Any other supervisors? Sure. All right, that'll bring us to the discussion on resolution 3523. Who'll be leading us in that?
This was brought forward as you realize, we moved the funds out of that broadband resolution that was there. Subsequently, a town came forward after that actually and wanted some funding to finish off their broadband. Not a large amount. We looked at different obvious avenues for that. And one of the things was this municipal housing grant. We have money set aside for this already. We have had no other further housing grants come in or applications come in at this time. So I wanted to try to use this money in a more broader way without creating another fund that had money sitting in it. And with that, then if we did get some housing applications that we needed to enhance the fund again, we'd come back to the county board and appropriate more money that way versus having two pools of money sitting aside not being used. So that was the premise on that. Just for broadband, it would work the same way as the housing grant with a 10-year payback back to the county for those funds. And at this point, the action would be to instruct us to modify that document then and go to county board with that modified document, or would it come back to the committee?
Well, so they would instruct staff to work on developing an ordinance if they agree that they, or a resolution if they agree that they want that to be brought back to the committee, that they're on board with that idea, and then we would bring the resolution back so they can review it, and then it would go to the board. So it wouldn't go to the board until
Back to this committee for review.
right. Well, it'll come back to the committee and then it'll go to March
We don't have a meeting.
if there's no county board in February.
Yeah.
So this isn't the resolution that's going to county board that we're
No.
looking at here?
3523 is the resolution that adopted the funding for the housing
program.
back in 2023.
Correct. So if the committee wanted us to modify this one to include broadband, we'd go back and then modify this and bring it back to the committee. So you saw the language.
Mr. Chair. Would we put a limit per project on that, like there is with the housing?
Thought at the time was to limit it to the exact amount of the housing is at the 70,000. Supervisor Olson has a question, unless you want to change the amount.
I don't know if we should let him in or not. What does the committee think?
I think we should.
We should let him in?
We need a good laugh.
It's a marginal call.
All right, what do you got?
No, me and Don had talked about like a $35,000 limit for the broad, so half of the 70,000.
So you want to modify it to 35,000
For broadband.
broadband?
Just as a clarifying, if we do get instructed to draft, so would that be the full fund is there and available for housing. It ends up being a first come, first serve upon application. Broadband would be also included in that, but any broadband funds would only be available up to 35. So if a bunch of housing projects come in before anybody comes and makes any broadband, they could use up the full fund. But if broadband comes in, a bunch of broadband requests come in, they would only have access to 35 of the full fund. Am I understanding that limitation correctly? You're not carving out 35 for broadband and 35 for housing. It's housing can use all of it, but broadband can only use 35.
So you need a motion to modify it, going back to.
Nope, so the motion for this committee today would be a motion to instruct staff to draft a resolution to come back before this committee
I guess that's what I meant.
next meeting,
Yeah.
in conformity with.
So then it would come back to us in that
Right.
for approval and send to the county board.
Right, and then if anyone wanted to amend or change it at that time, you'd have the ability to do that in
Okay.
committee before sending it to the board.
Did you say that that no one has come forward and worked with this so far?
We've had one application for the housing grant. That was
Was
Amory.
it granted?
Amory,
Yes, it was granted.
there's been no action on it, is there?
Their new administrator starts
Oh, that's.
this week, and then the contractor will go on there for signature.
Okay.
What do the towns have to do with putting in broadband? What's their role in it? Isn't it like in Clear Lake, it's the phone company that's putting broadband in? So what would the town have to do with it? Why would the town come for money?
If I could, so the conversation that we've had just casually with McKinley has been, they'd like to contribute, the town of McKinley would like to contribute to the project of broadband in McKinley and to essentially subsidize the local provider, which is Starwire, if I'm not mistaken. So let's say it's a $350,000 project. They want to put in 10%, so they put 35,000 in, and then Starwire would put the rest in, and then 10 years down the line, the county would the town would pay the county back. But it's a way for the town to incentivize with county money, an ISP to put in broadband. As I
Putting
understand
in
it, Brad.
main line or are they hooking up houses?
I'm getting some indication that it's both.
All right. I'm just not real aware of broadband, but I mean, we paid to have it, the line was in, the main line was in. And to get it, you pay the phone company. And then get on their list and wait till they come and bring it in. Not really understanding how this is gonna work. I see these companies wanting to get the lines in. I'm not seeing them quite so excited to make the hookups.
Just one more bit of information on this. My understanding is that Starwire has been excluded from the next round of project funding at the state level. So they will not have access to what's called BEAD or BEAD money. And so for them to keep moving, they've basically got to self-fund or partner up. And so I think that's where the conversation came in McKinley. Starwire wants to do the work. They'd like to get some kind of subsidy. They're not going to get it from the state. So to get McKinley done, they're the provider. This is just one way to get it done.
I feel the same way you do about the confusion, but I think part of the problem is there's a number of different companies that have their lines in the area. And they're the ones that are supposed to hook up, and some of them aren't interested at all in hooking up the service itself.
Yeah, they're actually not even interested when someone calls and wants to be hooked up.
Right.
Our check sat there at the phone company until it expired. And then we called and said, what, we send another check and wait till that one expires? Get hooked up, but, so I'm not opposed to this, to broadband or to this, to using the money somehow. But I just question how many of our constituents are gonna benefit from it? Or is just the Starlink or the company gonna benefit?
Yeah, my hookup was actually the opposite. For some reason, my provider ran it from the house to the road without the main line being there yet. Then the next couple months later, the main line finally went in the opposite way.
But what company was that?
Out of Amory Northwest.
Northwest. Well, that's not the experience I'm getting from Northwest.
But this money would be repaid by the municipality, so it's not, it's not like. we're
Yeah, it's a
investing in
loan.
it.
It's not like we're giving it. All right, does somebody want to move on it? And
Well, I'll make a motion that we comply with that and send it back to the council for the update of the 35 for the for the broadband and 70 for the housing.
I'll second that.
is that the motion you're looking for?
Basically instructing staff to draft a resolution.
You can
that
do
would amend
you always
35.
do them right anyway.
That's what you meant, instructing staff to amend the.
Well,
resolution?
I thought I said that. Must have said it
So many
earlier.
words.
My first comment was send it to staff, and then they corrected me on that, but.
I'm sure the clerk has it right.
Yeah. Combine the two comments, and you'll get
In
a
a second's good with that?
Yep.
All right, any more discussion? Not all those in favor?
Aye.
Carries. All right, I guess we're gonna be looking at employee handbook.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to provide just a little overview of what we're passing out here today, and then I've got my colleague, Kim Kruger, who's the HR director, to answer any specific questions you might have, fill in any gaps. It's possible that someone got my copy that has some writing on it. That's the case. So you may recall back in August, the county board approved a new personnel policy, came through this committee. And the personnel policy had been about 3 years in since the last version of it. So quite a long time in terms of the personnel policy cycle. We made a lot of changes to that policy. We tried to separate it from the handbook. In previous times, there was a lot of overlap between instructions to staff. Might have redundancies in the handbook and in the personnel policy. We might have contradictions. The personnel policy now is structured in such a way, so it basically is instructions to management about how to run human resources. The instructions to employees about how to behave and how managers should treat employees is in the handbook now. We try to make that a real clean distinction. So personnel policy passed in August. We've been working on the handbook since then. This was put into effect, you'll see the date, the 5th of January of this year. So that's the in-force handbook right now. There have been some substantial changes. One is in heft. The previous version was about half as long as this one. And that's partially because we took some stuff out of the personnel policy and put it in the handbook. As my colleague would be happy to describe, there were some changes to statute and law that we needed to include. The other thing that was going on was that we had multiple handbooks floating around, or documents called handbooks. So we really like to just have one, and that's what we've got right now. So that's in front of you. The last thing I'll mention before I cede the microphone is Jeremy Hall has some questions about certain employee-related. One in particular was telecommuting. So there is a telecommuting set of rules and guidelines in that manual, in that handbook now. And we now have an online form where folks who are interested in telecommuting can apply for it. And because it's online, we can actually count how many there are, which we were having a real hard time doing before. So I just wanted to mention that in this forum because Supervisor Hall had made that a particular focus last year. We think we've done a nice job with the guidelines and with how we'll keep track of folks that are telecommuting. I'm happy to answer any specific questions, and Kim can give you some more information if you'd like. It's for your review, and any comments you might have, we'll be happy to accept. The administrator approves the handbook. As you can see, he's got his John Hancock on the second or third page there. So yeah, feel free to review it and provide any input back to the administrator that was necessarily required. Would you like to have the HR director address a few of the key changes that were made from the old handbook to the current handbook? Would that be helpful?
Maybe the top 5.
I think we can do that. Tim, would you mind coming up?
Good morning, everyone. So really quickly, the main changes to the handbook were, as Don mentioned, an expansion of the federal and state employment laws. So we did expand on those and make sure they were compliant. We added an attendance policy that is new to the county, where it covers any type of job abandonment type behaviors or attendance or performance-related attendance issues. Don mentioned the offsite telecommuting. We did add a personal effects policy, which covers a real high level of what can be allowed in the employee's space to make sure it protects the building. We did change up how we do our donated PTO. So where instead of an employee asking for donated PTO and people donating to just the one, it's now a pool. And that way it's a little bit more even. We did notice newer hires that would have situations come up weren't able to get that amount of donated PTO that somebody who's been with the county for a longer period of time. We also added something called critical personal leave. The other thing that we noticed with the county is that there are situations that don't always fit FMLA, and they don't always fit all of our leave programs. And these are catastrophic events, like a victim of domestic abuse or a criminal act or a natural disaster like a house fire. So this is that leave that specifically covers that to give the employee some time to handle those situations and still retain their job and their benefits. We did further expand on the travel guidance and expenses, give our managers a little bit more clarity on how to handle when you have a non-exempt employee traveling for business. And then we included all the IT acceptable use into one spot. So that way people weren't having to look and search for what are the rules around technology with the county. You want me to cover changes or just the new? If it's all right with you, I just want to quickly highlight what's changed since the handbook. We did change our frozen sick payout. So now that isn't reserved only for retired employees. That is a payout that is allowed to all employees who leave on good standing. So that is that sick bank that the county made a change to a few years ago, where we did an extended leave bank versus sick bank. And when an employee leaves on good standing, they would get a 50% payout sent to an HRA. We changed up our comp time rules so that employees can use premium pay now to put towards their comp time, not just overtime. And we cleaned up our longevity bonus, which I believe you guys were aware of because we did make that notice in the personnel policy. So with that one, we cleaned up the years of service lines, and then we also defined that we are basing it off of the rehire date, not going backwards and adding up all the years of service that an employee may have with the county. And then the final change is around PTO and extended leave bank. Full-time employees will continue to get front-loaded their PTO, where part-time employees will go back to accruing based on hours worked. We increased the carryover limits for non-exempt employees or hourly employees to 300 hours, exempt employees 380. And ELB, we also increased those amounts to 46.25 hours annually, and then their max amount that they can have in that bank is 185 hours. Is there any questions that I could answer for you?
When Kim was talking frozen sick, that was when we converted for Act 10 from vacation and sick time to PTO. And so whoever had that bank there, that time was frozen for the employee. And commend Don and Kim and their group for tackling this and trying to get everything on in one document, where we had different departments doing different things or interpreting different things different ways. So it's a big uplift. We have been going out now starting this Monday, and we've had 4 employee meetings so far, explaining the changes and making sure they're all there. And once we've gone through all that and get everything out there, all the employees will sign the harassment policy, the handbook policy, and the drug and alcohol policy with that. And moving forward, it'll be digitally in our pay system. So any changes to the handbook, all employees will get automatically emailed and have to verify with signature that they received the changes. So we won't have a bunch of copies floating out there.
Did you consult the employees at all when you're putting this handbook together?
Management and directors.
So no.
We took input on all the critical items with that. With our talks now, we've gotten some employee feedback on it, but it's been ongoing throughout the whole stages.
So that's a yes or a no? That you consulted employees on putting the handbook together?
Kim, I'll let you answer that. It's kind of.
There are portions of the handbook that we did change based on employee feedback. The one example that I can give you is specific to the PTO and extended leave bank. So the benefits around that, Don and I both had received multiple feedback on those changes. And we listened to the employees and made that change. And that's specific to that part-time employees, anybody who's not a full-time employee, being able to accrue based on hours worked instead of just having a set amount that they get each year. And then trying to align those benefits across the entire organization versus some groups having more and some groups having less. And then Don, I think, has more to add.
Well, just as a coda to that, we don't plan for the next handbook to take 4 years to come out. Because of the system that we've got, it can be somewhat more dynamic. I've already got 4 pages of notes from employees about things that they have questions about. We will resolve these, and then we'll issue a new handbook. It might be as early as next week. So I think there's the opportunity for employees is to let management know how they feel about what's in this handbook. And of course, we'll have to make decisions about what we want to do, but I think we're at a point of sort of having an open dialogue with the employees on the handbook. And I can let you know that of the 3 pages of things that we've already gotten from employees, 75% of them are in the next edition already. And it's a matter of time before we have legal counsel review a revised handbook and then publish it again. But I believe we've gotten employee feedback, and we will continue to get it.
And some of that feedback is basically on wording and interpretation on there. Naturally, operational changes we'll listen to also, but it depends on the operation changes. It'll be at different levels of the directors.
Well, I mean, I've seen a lot of handbooks, and this is a 2-page. If this was 1 page, it'd be twice as big, but this is quite a handbook. We'll have to review it. And if we have questions, I guess, and especially like Jeremy, I mean, could we get him a copy so that at the next meeting, he's not sitting there trying to review it, that we would be prepared to have questions and.
Yes, yeah, we'll get Jeremy a copy, definitely.
All right, because we're not gonna sit here and try to read this thing now.
No.
So we'll put it on the agenda. Everybody read it. If we have questions, we'll bring them to the next meeting and. Anybody else want to comment? All right, we'll have the annual update from the investment committee.
Mind queuing that presentation up? Just a couple of slides to go over.
Thank you.
Advance a couple of slides, Claire. Go to the one with the pie chart. So just a pictorial representation of where we are with our investments here in Polk County. On the left side is as close to current as we've got right now. We've got about $33.5 million under management versus just right at 33 back in basically August 1st. So, one takeaway is that our portfolio gained, $600,000 in a few months. That's nice. The other thing that's, I hope, obvious is that we've been getting less and less liquid. And you might ask why we're doing that when the primary objective of or directive of our investment policy is to stay liquid. We think we're liquid enough, and it's been a really good time to have been liquid because the yield curve has been inverted. So you can make more money by having literally your dollars in a cash management account than you could buying T-bills or CDs. That situation is reversing. The yield curve is no longer inverted. So we think, and our investment advisors believe, we should get more into fixed assets, lock in some decent longer term rates. So that's what we're doing. Right now, we're at roughly 36% liquid. We were at almost 60. Rates are lower than they were this time last year. Now I'm looking at the situational analysis slide. If you want to go over one more, Claire. So the rate environment is not as favorable. 6-month T-bills are almost exactly, as of yesterday, things changed yesterday, but 1% less than last year right now. Our yield curve's returning to a normal yield curve rather than inverted. That just means we're going to be rewarded for longer term investments. Things sort of go back to the old normal. And the way you can note that is if you look down on that fourth bullet point, current T-bills, 1 year is at 4.2, the 10 years at 4.47. This time last year, it was reversed. The 1 year was at 4.8 and change, and the 10 year was just a little bit over 4. So we think it's time to move some of that liquidity into fixed assets because we think the short-term rates are going to continue to slide. So if you flip over to the 2025 strategy, our advice from PMA, our investment advisors, and investment committee believes that this is the right way to go. We want to continue to lock in favorable longer-term rates, 2 years plus. So we're going to drive our liquidity from about 36% down to about 20%. In general, be using T-bills as our instruments rather than CDs, although we'll always keep some money in CDs, particularly with local CDs. We've got an investment ladder, so we want to have as smooth a ladder as we can, or the rungs as evenly spaced, so that if we need to become more liquid, we can. And we want to keep about 6 million in cash management or in maturing T-bills and CDs in any given month. So we can always get at 6 million of investment dollars. So that's our 2025 strategy. We talked about it as an investment committee and it was approved. And we've instructed the folks who do our transactions to help us execute the strategy in 2025. The next time, if you want to put that pie chart back up for a second, Claire. This is speculative, but what we hope to have happen is that the orange slice will get smaller, the blue slice will get larger. Next time we see you, there'll be some more money in the bank. Right now, the returns we're looking at are 4+%. Question? I'm going to be right back up here.
All right, if you're doing the reviewing the Q4 payments in excess of 75,000.
So this is a list, actually it's 3 lists. By policy, we are to review with the General Government Committee expenses over $75,000. And so this is a snapshot of Q4. And there's nothing I don't have a slide for this. But the first page is just a list of all of the disbursements that were $75,000 or up during Q4 of 2024. And they're organized from largest amount down to the smallest. So you can see that the Clam Falls Dam project, there was a disbursement of $930 some odd thousand, all the way down to fixing up the mobile command center at 78.8. So that's the list, and there's some notes about what the expense was for. If you flip over to the second page, you'll see that we've got the totals by vendor. And you'll see that Health Partners, that's our health carrier. And we spent $1.7 million with them in Q4. The dam overall with Lunda, almost 3. Pension, 800,000. And then you can read on down from there. The third page has the totals by project or department. So this is basically who is writing the checks. You can get a sense of, some of the capital projects we're working on, the dam, recycling, by looking at this list. Any questions about what you're seeing?
Say if there is, it won't be at this meeting. Time to review it and maybe the same thing. If someone has questions, they can bring it to the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
All right, administrators update.
Mr. Chair, I don't have a lot coming out of Public Works Committee yesterday. Public Works projects are moving along as scheduled. As you heard, the dam project is moving along. The actuators will be installed later on this summer. If you go by there, you notice they do have the bridge open with 1 lane currently for snow plowing, which we haven't had yet, but it's there. in 2024, we had 8 fatalities on our highways, which is down from our average of 11, which is fairly high for a county our size, but that's typically where we hit. Last year, the year before in 2023, we had 16 fatalities on that. Also, we had talked with HHS committee and that, talking about funding was the possibility of a central kitchen for Meals on Wheels and doing the Endeavors building for that. We got our engineering estimate back on that project. And that was, it had 3 different components. It was adding a couple more windows to the Endeavor side, filling in the pool that is not used anymore. There's a small whirlpool tub there that's not used anymore. And then the kitchen installation with that. So our estimates, the window replacement came in at 32,000. The pool fill in and re-leveling that floor came out at 53,000. The kitchen install came in at $885,000. When you add permitting engineering on it, the engineering for the commercial hood, we're at 3,500. The commercial kitchen design to get that through in the state review brings us to a grand total of $999, $819 for that project. So we'll be discussing that at HHS and how we'll move forward or which way we'll pivot on that project and see what we can do. But that's where our estimates came in at right now on there. So it's not as easy just as putting in a stove and some cabinets for food. The last thing I just want to say, Claire, can you bring a beacon for me? The mapping on there and zoom in on the government center for me. Want to wish you all a happy new year too. The other thing is staff is working very hard on rolling out the handbook, closing up 2024's numbers, getting ready for 2025. Go to the north a little bit, Claire. A little more. Try to catch that corner right in here. Right there. You zoom in on right there. Tighter. That'll work right there. Just for your information, due to there was a property cleanup due to bad property descriptions and a survey cleanup, this little wedge here that apparently said it was county-owned property was a cleanup, and now that's back on the landowners and back on the tax roll. There's bad property description that's been cleaned up by the ES division. So just to make you aware of that, that's back on there. Due to property descriptions, it just came out to be a weird wedge instead of the corner it was supposed to be. So that's been cleaned up and back on the tax roll. But that's all I have for my report right now. It's early in the year, getting moving on it, and divisions are just getting ready to go for getting into 2025 with projects and everything. So that's all I have, unless you have questions.
All right. Also, gonna review our work plan. Got one?
February.
Well. Should be able to handle February. Are we gonna meet in February?
Well, that question came up at public protection also, but there was nothing on our February for public protection either. The same as this one.
The only thing we'd have is that resolution, if we're gonna amend that resolution,
Right.
3523. I mean, how critical is that to?
That would bring, not that was be prepared for March. Didn't you indicate that?
Right now, I don't believe it's time sensitive on that resolution. It can wait till March.
So at the present time, it looks like there isn't a committee so far that I've found out
Meeting.
has anything critical requires attention in February.
What Public Safety, Public Works was gonna do was just hold off on canceling it. They didn't cancel it at the meeting, but holding on, if nothing comes up on the agenda that needs attention, the meeting will be canceled in the appropriate amount of time.
So it looks like that one will be, that'll be the first one that has met that really probably is leaning toward no meeting.
Yeah, well, I mean, if that's not time sensitive, that resolution, I mean, you don't need to meet just to deal with that, because all we do is pass it on to county board.
Okay,
And then, employee handbook, if we wanted that on our next agenda, if it's not February, then March. And then, Q4 payments in excess of 75,000, if someone wanted to review that and had questions. Is probably fine in March. Do we stand the same way and just say we'll keep our meeting on for February 12th? But unless there's something on the agenda that requires attention, we would cancel.
Yes.
All right, that's what we're gonna do then. And then in March, we would have the Q4 payments, the employee handbook, and the resolution amended 3523.
Yes.
Anything else?
make a motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
All right.
Stand adjourned at 9:12.
Wanted to give Leslie a bone. This